This is the Leica 35mm Summilux-M spherical, the FLE. It's been out for 16 years now, and while it is a dream lens for many, a workhorse for some, how well does it really kind of fare in the modern day, as obviously 60 megapixel sensors weren't exactly what this lens was made for in the first place? Let's talk about it. Now, I bought this camera and lens with my own money. Leica has no idea I'm making this video, but I've realized I've made so many 35mm videos for the Leica system over the years. And a few years ago, I had two Leica M10s. I sold both of those to fund my M11, and I had a little bit of money left over, so I used that money to sell my Zeiss 35mm f1.4 and purchase this 35mm f1.4 spherical FLE. And while mentioning that, it wasn't because I was dissatisfied with the look of the Zeiss lens. To be honest, I actually really like that, and I kind of preferred it in a few small little ways to the Leica. But the main thing, and as you can see here, it shows it, is the fact that this lens is smaller, more compact, and it doesn't, it survives the Leica balance test, as I used to call it. It's not the smallest and lightest lens in the world necessarily, but it is much easier and balances much more on a camera like this than the Zeiss lens does. And early on in my Leica journey, Leica actually lent me this lens in the same colorway. And ever since then, it was like I will buy this lens someday. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Now, it is not the smallest 35mm f1.4 lens I've ever used. There are plenty of other ones, many of which are kind of going after, like the steel rim, those really small ones. I've used a few of those. But what I love about this lens is that it's a really good mix of having some vintage soul to it while still being able to resolve a modern sensor if you need it to. I think the thing that really kind of tossed this out at me is I was reviewing the Light Lens Lab 35mm f1.4 double spherical. So this would have been two models before this actual lens in the Leica catalog. And their version obviously isn't the exact version of the double spherical. It's going to have some differences. It's kind of like a more modern interpretation of that. But the thing that I was really kind of thrown off by a little bit was that the bokeh on this lens renders much more, in my opinion, like a vintage lens. But it does have some of that kind of magic of both a vintage lens and a modern lens. This lens just performs really well, despite the fact that it has some vintage characteristics. It's definitely not apochromatic. It's going to be much different from something like the 35 Apo Summicron, but it does have a really interesting and unique fall off that I really like. It's something that, especially on like a 60 megapixel sensor, if you're shooting wide open, if you're looking for strong detail on everything, you're probably going to want to go with a 35 Apo. It renders and resolves much better than this lens, but this lens has like a character and a soul and things to it that a lot of modern lenses just don't have. Now, this video does not have a sponsor, but if you would consider subscribing, especially if you've watched a few of these videos, it would mean the world to me. I'm trying to get to 100,000, and if you look back at the plethora, the library of videos I've made, making videos about Leica cameras just isn't the way to grow your channel crazy fast. But I know that the vast majority of people that watch these videos aren't subscribed. So if you could do me a solid, subscribe if you like more videos like this, that would be super helpful for me. And so if you've made it this far, you're probably going to notice that I'm going to sort of wax poetic about this lens. This lens is a workhorse for me. I use it a ton. I've used it probably actually more in my personal life than I have in my professional life, but I have plenty of examples at weddings and things that show off the character and just the absolute usability of this lens. This lens also did pass that balance test and that small, compact feel and look where I can carry this lens around all day, around my neck, over my shoulder, and it's not a burden at all. And the balance of it, when I just hold it like this, like it's not falling forward in a giant way like some of the other lenses that I've used that are much more pointed down. And while that might not seem like a big deal, when you're using these lenses and cameras over and over and over and over for long days, you can look through my channel and see how many 35mm focal lengths I've used on the M system and have owned over the years of 12 years of shooting with Leica M system. And so when you find one that really feels like it balances well, like the image quality is good for what you want, is also interesting to look at, it's giving you something that your other lenses don't have. There's a reason why I want to pick up this camera and this lens combination and use it over something like a Sony G Master. And if it rendered and looked a lot like the 35 from Sony, it just wouldn't be as much of a use case for this specifically over, you know, something that might be a little bit more clinical. Now, while I've used the 35 Apo and it's an amazing lens, obviously it's incredible, it's just not really for me in that same way, because if I'm going to use a lens like this, I'm going to want to use it wide open. I want that extra stop of light. But I will say that the new Noctilux 35 f1.2 does intrigue me. I would be lying if I said it didn't, because I think it takes a lot of the character and things that I love about this, boosts it up a little bit more, and then also improves upon things like the sharpness and whatnot to give it a really unique look. That being said, I do not have nearly the amount of money that it would cost me to sacrifice tons of different things to pick something like that up. That being said, that's probably a good way to put this, is that this lens has been out for 16 years now to some degree. This is the original version. So it's the version 1 of the FLE. It's not the close focus version. And for me, someone that's almost always just going to be using this on an M camera, I'm going to be using it with a rangefinder. Focusing only down to 0.7 meters is fine. It's totally fine. From what I know about these lenses, I'm sure the new version, while it's the same optical formula, I think some of the manufacturing processes and stuff could be a little bit tighter with tolerances, just things they've learned. So while this lens performs how it does, maybe a new version might perform slightly different. That being said, I feel great about how this lens performs. I'm not a landscape photographer, and if I was, I also wouldn't care nearly as much about the sharpness and detail of every single thing at f1.4, because this lens does resolve really well at 5.6, at f8. And that's kind of where this lens usually lands for me. I'm going to be shooting this thing wide open at f1.4, or I'm going to be shooting it at f5.6 or f8. There's usually not a giant middle ground for me. I either want like the look and everything, or I want to stop down and get a lot more resolving power. And I think that this is the sweet spot for both of these things. It's like the maximum amount of character, and then it's also like the ability to stop down and have a really sharp image that looks really great and resolves really well in a tiny package that doesn't cost an absurd amount. I will say that I got this lens for a little bit less than $3,000, I believe. It's nowhere near a cheap lens, even for an older lens, but it's something like that you, for most of us at least, like, I'm not a young person. I've been photographing for a long time. I've been photographing professionally for a long time. And it took me years. It took me like a decade to build up my Leica kit to have my main 3 lenses be all Leica glass. So do I think that every single person needs to buy this lens? Of course not. But I do think something like this lens is something that's really fun to aspire to. And then once you get it, it's a great lens. It's going to be a lens that I have for a long, long time. I don't see a real big reason to upgrade or move in any way. It's just been a really good travel companion for me. It's been my default lens. If I'm going to take one lens out with the Leica system, if I'm not reviewing something else, it's probably going to be the 35 Lux. And obviously the 35mm focal length is just one of the most popular for a reason. It's very versatile. It gives you wide enough that you can get a little bit more of the scene in there. And it compresses enough, and you add that to the 1.4 aperture that you can take tighter portraits. So while this lens is not perfect, it probably you wouldn't expect it to be for as old as it is. I think that what makes it really good and perfect in a different way are those limitations, are those imperfections, is the fact that it has some interesting character to it. It has interesting bokeh. It has stuff you would not expect to see out of a modern lens, while still feeling like a modern lens, resolving a lot like a modern lens. And so that's why this lens is kind of the perfect mismatch of every little bit of Leica's history, all shoved into one, and why it's become one of my favorite lenses for a long time. Thankfully, after aspiring for it for most of my career. So let me know if you've used this lens in the comments down below and what your thoughts are in general. I honestly think it's kind of the best of all worlds for Leica stuff, but I can see why some people might prefer things like the Apo or especially the new Noctilux if you have that kind of money. And if you're someone that doesn't have that kind of money, the Light Lens Lab 35 double spherical is a great option. There are plenty of great options from Voigtlander. The Typoc 35 is really good as well. And I still think that the Zeiss Distagon 35 1.4 is maybe the best like bang for your buck lens that I've ever used in terms of the Leica system. So while I haven't used that lens in a while, obviously I still recommend it wholeheartedly. Now, if you want to see more of my 35mm videos, you can probably just type in bench height 35mm in the search bar. You can also watch my Light Lens Lab 35 double spherical version here. You can watch my Zeiss 35 video here, and I will see you in one of those.